Miranda's first thought as she walked the empty streets of Harksburg was that the silence of the village didn't really speak of emptiness. It was anticipation. Each step toward the center of town left her feeling like she was in a dream. A dark dream. One where the dreamer ended up chased by something you never saw. The one you always woke from before it caught you. Her footsteps sped up unconsciously as Miranda felt her heart begin to race. Her bare feet crushed the dry leaves covering the ground. Harvest was past. It was deep autumn with the air's thin chill clouding her breath as she exhaled. And then she walked past Gregor's blacksmith and into the town square. Standing dead center of a patch of brown grass was the Moonstone. It stood as tall as a small tree and was as wide as a door. Its translucent white surface was worn smooth by rain and wind, the only things that ever had any effect on it. Her father, upon hearing of Miranda's choosing, had taken Gregor's smithing hammer and rained blow after blow on the stone. He had fallen over from exhaustion, but only after ruining the hammer on the stone's unyielding form. Gregor didn't complain. Nobody did. It was almost a part of the ritual. Gregor had just helped her father back to the smithy and talked with him. She didn't know what was said between the men, but when she saw him next, her father was a broken man. He had clung to her sobbing until the sun had turned toward dusk. Miranda then smiled, told her father sweet lies about her being ready, and sent him home. She raised her eyes to the full moon above the stone. It was almost directly above it. She had to hurry. If she wasn't there when the moon was at its highest. She shuddered. Her mind jumped to 3 autumns ago. Lai Lin had been chosen that harvest. He had run, refusing the stone, refusing the pact. He had left in the dead of the night. A week before he was to present himself in the square under the moon. She shuddered. They had found his body, torn apart in the middle of the road. She had seen it. They all had. It was a warning. Do not break the pact. Miranda blinked. She was standing before the stone. She hadn't even noticed her own arrival. Looking up, the moon was high, and the stone glowed with its cold light. You came. Miranda knew that voice. Desra, the chosen of last fall. Miranda looked up and stared at the girl standing in the silhouette of the Moonstone. It was Desra's face, though she was dressed in a gown that any noble would hang her for having. It was lined with pearls and gold thread, and its rose-pink colour accented her pale skin as if it was made just for her. It was! Desra's excited response to the unspoken thought made Miranda jump. I had so hoped you would be chosen. It's wonderful beyond the stone. There's always food, and the elves sing the most wonderful songs. Miranda let out a soft sob of relief. I thought you were dead. Where did you go? Questions began to spill from her lips, each one leading to another. Desra smiled as she asked them, nodding enthusiastically. After a time, Miranda stopped asking questions. For all of Desra's excited nods, she had not answered a single one. Instead, she smiled and took Miranda in a hug. Her arms were cool and soothing, but the words that followed chilled her to the marrow. I'm ever so glad you didn't run. I would have hated to have to chase you of all people. Miranda stepped back and stared at Desra. Her face was perfect. The pox scars from the outbreak when they were 7 were missing. Not covered with makeup, but gone. Her eyes were almost silver in the cold light of the moon, and her mouth. But soon I'll be able to bring you to the Court of Moons and everything will be wonderful. Miranda swallowed. Her teeth. They were pointed, like a beast's. Desra's head tilted, just like it always had when she had been curious. Is something wrong, Miri? Her pet name for Miranda. She was perfect. And by the goddess, oh so wrong. Miranda didn't ask the questions that now came to her mind. The answers were too terrifying to consider. Was it an elf? A beast? Something wearing her skin or controlling her like a puppet? Her breath caught. What if it really was Desra? Or at least what she became? Don't run. Desra's voice had turned to winter. and her eyes had turned the same glowing white as the Moonstone. Miranda tensed and shoved both of her hands out in front of her. They clasped a grip of hard wood, tied with sinew to a blade now buried deep in the thing wearing Desra's face. It looked down and smiled. "Mortal weapons of iron and steel cannot harm me, Miri." She looked into Miranda's eyes with her own glowing gaze. "Many before you have tried." Miranda nodded. "We know. That's why we used your Moonstone. My father finally broke off a splinter. It took him years, but when I was chosen, he had no choice. He broke it loose. Gregor made the knife." Miranda twisted her hands and the blade buried in not Desra's chest. "And me? I was chosen to carry the knife to the stone and end the pact." It staggered, eyes wide with unfamiliar pain and fear. Miranda followed, trying to push the knife deeper as the thing broke into an inhuman wail and jerked away. It flew to the stone, the knife still buried in its chest, and sank into its glowing surface. The Moonstone let out a crack like thunder and shattered. It was the matter of a moment for Miranda to reach down and pick up the still glowing knife of wood, stone, and ancient magic. It was easy to pick out from the dead, grey stone that remained. When she looked up from it, she matched the gaze of her father and the rest of the village that had entered the square. No, the village had never been empty. Its people had just been waiting for Miranda and the Moonblade.